flag, and let's go ahead and salute our flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's go ahead and Miss City Clerk, if you could call the roll, please, orally.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Here.
Okay. Councilmember Ibarra.
Here.
Okay. Councilmember Figueroa. Councilmember Figueroa. Okay. Councilmember Charette.
Here, yes. Thank you.
Councilmember Nickel.
Here.
Okay. Councilmember Richard.
Here.
And Councilmember Mulvihill.
Here.
And Mayor John Valdivia.
Here. Good afternoon, everybody. And Clerk, I guess we have a quorum. Do we have any public comments?
No.
Okay, let's get right into our item. Miss City Manager, item number 1.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for coming together so quickly for this special meeting. It's very timely, as Chris is going to explain to you, and we do have some folks from SBTA on the call as well to answer any questions you may have. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Alex right now.
Good evening, Mayor. Can everybody hear me okay?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, good. So I am very thankful, as Terry said, that you all were able to come together on such short notice. We are going to talk tonight about the Mount Vernon Bridge, or the Mount Vernon Viaduct, it's been referred to as well, the bridge replacement. We have been in contact with SBCTA over the past many months, and I'm sure that many of you have had some involvement in terms of talking about the funding and some of the changes and challenges that we have had. So last week, when we talked with Ray and his team, we got kind of some final numbers in terms of the city's share and our cooperative share for the project. Just to kind of remind everybody, you know, this bridge and the funding that we have in place right now is really kind of a one-time opportunity to be able to take advantage of a lot of the highway bridge program funds. And so tonight, what we're really looking for is consensus, a commitment from the council that after we review the kind of the new impacts that we have some increases in the costs of the project, that we are okay with possibly leveraging 5 years of our Measure I arterial funds through SBCTA to cover the additional funding needs of the project. So with that, Mitch, if you'll hit the slide. Just a really quick review. I know you guys have been through this many times. The Mount Vernon Bridge was built in 1934. It served the community well for a very long time. We had some inspections that were done on the bridge back in 2005, and the bridge came back with a very low rating due to some structural issues, which I think kind of started the need for this project in the first place. So at this point, the city and SBCTA have received bids for the construction of the project. It is a design build project, and the total estimated project cost is about $230 million. The project timeline, when we finally get to break ground and get everything going, is approximately 2 to 3 years. And I know that I've already kind of had some questions about what does that look like. Those are details that we will bring back to you when we're kind of closer to getting the project off the ground. There are 4 agencies essentially that are contributing to the project funding. BNSF Railway is contributing approximately $32 to $33 million towards the project. The highway bridge program funds are really the bulk of the project. And I apologize, I'm probably going to have to ask Ray to tell me exactly what number that is, but I'll come back to that. And then there's a local share and a public share that have to be contributed as a requirement of those highway bridge funds. And so the local share is a portion that comes from the city's DIF funds, specifically the circulation DIF. And then the public share is actually a piece that comes from Measure A arterial funds. And those funds are not the funds that we use for our maintenance efforts. So when Alex is programming projects through the CIP, he's using Measure I pass-through funds is what we refer to those. The funds that we're talking about tonight are the city's allocation of revenues from Measure I money that SBCTA holds on to and that we can use to help reimburse portions of projects that add capacity. So the key is transportation projects that add capacity. So as we move forward, please know that the Measure I funding that we've been programming for streets, for slurries and overlays, that is not something that is impacted by this discussion. Mitch? Okay. So in order to get the local and public shares together, the city had entered into a cooperative agreement. I apologize, I called it a cooperative funding agreement. It's actually a cooperative agreement that was established in 2016. And basically at that time, I said the city share of cost was a total of 15.7 million. That really is made up of those two pieces that I just mentioned. So a portion of that comes from DIF, approximately 6 million of that, and then 9.7 million is from our share of the Measure I arterial funds. Those numbers were what the city had previously committed to in 2016 and when they had entered into or amended that cooperative agreement with SBCTA. So where we're at today is that the construction costs for the project came back higher than originally anticipated. And so there has been efforts on all parties' sides to kind of figure out how we get to cover this funding in the most, the most cost-effective way. And so that project change, the change in cost, has now put us in a position where there's an additional $10 million, a little over $10 million, that needs to come from that local and public share combination. So what we're looking at today in terms of the cost for that whole share is about $26 million. So we've had an increase in the amount that the city needs to contribute from the DIF, from our developer impact fees. And then there's also an increase in the contribution on the Measure I arterial funds side. So as we kind of move along, are there any questions at this point? Anything?
Hey, Chris,
Sure.
This is Mayor Valdivia. I think the ask today is for the $10 million. We appreciate the historical perspective, but not to shock and scare and awe the council. We're not asking for 26. Right now, we're asking, today's ask is the 10 million. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. The city had already committed to the 15.7, the 16-ish. So now it's really just making up that difference of what was not committed to before.
Got it.
Correct. I have a question.
Go ahead, Jim.
Chris, you had mentioned Measure A. When you're speaking, what were you referring to there?
Measure I.
Oh, measure I.
Sorry.
I had A. Okay. Now,
I will enunciate.
okay. Now, you had mentioned the arterial, the Measure I arterial funds were not used for our maintenance, correct?
Correct.
And but we use the Measure arterial funds all the time. What do we use them for?
So currently the city has 5 projects that have a portion of these arterial funds tied to them.
Uh-huh.
And those projects are probably not in front of me. I know there's the 40th Street widening is one of them.
Mhm.
State Street widening is one of them. I believe
Etch Street widening.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
So the program that is the Measure I, Measure Streets Arterial funds do fund the Nexus Study projects, which is at this point of time, we have the Etch Street widening, 40th Street widening, State Street extension, and we have the Mount Vernon Bridge. And then the other one that we have on the books right now is 5th Street rehabilitation.
Now, if we were to shift those funds to the bridge, will that jeopardize any or all of those projects?
So with what we're going to take a look at, and I've actually got a slide a little later that addresses that, the projects that we have in there right now would not be affected. If we chose to unfund a project later to help support any shortfalls from DIF. But at this point, no, when we talk about this, we are maintaining the funding that was set aside for those projects in the arterial fund.
Okay, my last concern is that obviously Measure I projections are going to be reduced because of the COVID-19 situation, and probably Ray Wolf could address that. I think there is a concern that the Measure I funds are going to be reduced because of this, because obviously there's the quarter-cent sales tax and sales are down. We're going to get a review for the city come next Wednesday, but I'm just concerned that we're sort of dealing away a number of years, which we still don't know what the impact is going to be. Maybe if Ray Wolf is on the line or somebody else could identify just how much of a hit you're going to be getting with Measure I.
So this is Ray. Thank you, Mayor Valdivia and members of the council, Council Member Mulvihill. Good to see you. Yes, we're actually tracking very closely the impacts that we're seeing just in the short 3 to 4 week period that the economy has taken a tailspin. We don't know what ultimately it's going to be. We're adjusting our budget down significantly right now. But all the economic indicators at this point are showing that as long as they're able to flatten the curve out on the infection curve at some point in the near future, within the next couple of months, that the economy should rebound. It'll be up to us ultimately, our comfort level with getting back into society and interacting on a personal level. But this is different than I think what we experienced with the Great Recession. Now that's, all just projection, right? But we have a lot of money in the arterial fund. That's one of the funds that has not, the cities actually have to bring projects forward and advance projects. And that program has not been tapped into to the extent that we expected at this point. So I'm not worried about us not having enough money, even if the economy takes a tank for a couple of years. I think we're still in pretty good shape. When we talk specific numbers, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Zurich, who's also on the phone here, because she's been working very closely with Chris and with Alex as we've worked through these final issues, hopefully, for this project to get underway.
I'll ask a question real quick. What made that shortfall, the 10 million from 2016 to 2020? What's the main reason why there's a 10 million temporary This is a 10.3 million, shortfall.
I'm gonna have to interpret that. I can't.
Hey, can you guys mute your lines, please? And then that might help on the background noise if you mute your line. Go ahead, Sandra. Once again.
Once again, my question was what brought about the shortfall of 10 million between 2016 and 2020 now? If somebody has an answer.
So, Councilmember Ibarra, it's related to the fact that the project costs came in higher than originally anticipated. And kind of one of the urgencies right now in terms of this conversation we're having is the fact that we have asked the contractor to extend that pricing twice while we have tried to work through this funding gap. And we are coming up on the expiration of that, and don't want to find ourselves in a position where we have to rebid the project and it comes back at 300 million instead of 230 million.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and move to approve this. This is a long overdue project. Sorry, this is Councilman Figueroa. I wasn't on the initial. I was having some difficulty with the logging in of it, but I am able to see everything that's going on. This is a long overdue project. And in fact, the conditions of this bridge are deplorable at this point. I mean, there are wires sticking out. I think there's even a lane closure at this point simply because it is just so unsafe to pass through that lane. This definitely needs to happen. We cannot, kick the can down the road any further with this project. And so I will go ahead and move to approve. I think some of the questions that I had were already.
Hold on, Councilman. Is there a second to the floor motion? All right, Councilman Sanchez. Thank you, sir. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Figueroa. Hold on, Fred. Go ahead, Mr. Figueroa.
No, I think some of the other questions that I had were already answered during the presentation here, but just to reassure some of the residents that will any of the mill overlay, the slurry seals, will that in any way be impacted by this project?
So one of the things that I had shared earlier, Councilmember Figueroa, was that the arterial funds that we're talking about using are not the Measure I funds that we use for our road maintenance. So those will continue to be programmed for slurry seals and overlays through our CIP projects.
Okay, thank you. And I thought I did hear that during the presentation as well. So thank you.
Okay, Fred.
Yes, thank you. The 5 projects that are currently that are on the CIP, obviously, I'm interested in the 40th Street widening. That's something that's been on for a long, long time, and I don't want that to be delayed in any way, shape, or form. It's gone on way too long. My main question is on those 5 projects. Are they going to be impacted by this for the next 5 years? Because we're going to be out 5 years before we kind of replenish this fund. And then a second question is this bid coming in high because the economy was booming prior to the COVID-19 issue, and now maybe that might change. The economy might go into certainly I hope not a recession, but where people might be working for less than they would have during a booming economy. I guess that maybe should go to Ray Wolf or to Kristen. Kristen, I think it might go to you.
So I'm going to take a stab at it, and I might have to pass it off to either Ray or maybe Alex. My understanding is that because of the fact that this is a design build project, so changes will be coming as we go along through this. That does tend to hold a little bit more price to it and a little bit more risk. But so that impacts this. Alex or Ray, do either of you have anything else to add?
Yeah, if I could this is Ray, if I could tack on to that. When we took this project on, we were trying to figure out how quickly we could replace it. You've heard about the condition state of the bridge. I'm a former bridge designer, and I'm very nervous about this bridge. And since it's right outside of my office, I've had ample opportunity to take a close look at it. And it's my professional opinion that we need to move very quickly to replace this. So one of the strategies that we talked about early on was, rather than following a traditional design bid build process, where you really work through all of the risks associated with a project and quantify them as far as the project cost is concerned, that takes a long time to work through that process. That would have taken a number of additional years to get us there, at least another 2, maybe 3 years to get there. And so again, under the auspices of we need to do something here very quickly, we actually went to Sacramento and secured specific design build legislation for local streets and roads, so we could use that procurement for this project to move the project as quickly as possible. So what's missing, another big sort of cost impact here, is we have not gone out and done a lot of subsurface evaluation. We haven't drilled to understand what's underground. So whoever the successful bidder on this is taking a risk because they don't know what's underground in an operating intermodal facility that's been operational for 100 years. So there's a huge risk there. Another sort of cost risk that would have tagged along no matter how we proceeded is you're working with 3 different railroads. You've got BNSF, who's got 18 to 20 tracks out there. You've got Amtrak trains that run under there, and then Metrolink operates under there as well. And so, if you've ever dealt with, and I know the city has dealt with railroads, right? They're not easy. And I can respect the reasons why they operate the way they do. But then having to operate with 3 different railroads just becomes that much more of a challenge. We worked very closely with the 3 railroads, particularly with BNSF, and came to an agreement where they're putting $29.5 million into the project, which is not traditional. But there's a benefit to their operations because the bridge bifurcates their operations today, and they've got people that are working under it now. You guys had to put diapers on the bridge to help to protect them. But those diapers are only protecting at certain locations on the bridge. And BNSF and their labor unions have expressed significant concerns about the safety of their employees. So they're invested in this. However, they want this bridge replaced immediately. And so because we did take a step back and ask ourselves the same question, we don't know how long the COVID pandemic is going to last, and it could have tremendous impacts on the economy, and those impacts could spill over for years, just like the Great Recession did. We don't think that's going to happen because the economic indicators are significantly different, but it could. But the challenge that we have is, A, the bridge will stay there in place for some period longer. B, unless we scrap what we've done to date and we actually design the bridge, we're not going to eradicate a lot of the risks. And so those were big drivers in the cost. And then C, it's unlikely that BNSF will be a funding partner. And so I don't think we saved $30 million by rebidding this project 6 months, 9 months from now. So that's why I think we're in the position we are in, and I recommend strongly that we move forward.
Okay, Henry, or Fred, I'm sorry, did you have more questions, Fred?
No, I just wanted to thank Ray for that explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Fred. Henry.
Yeah, just on the risk component of the project, if you were to put a percentage on this, Councilmember Charette and I actually went to Sacramento and had a series of meetings, and one of the discussion points when we visited the CTC was that they were concerned about the costs. Obviously, the component related to the right-of-way acquisition was a major concern of theirs. They had never seen that component of the project, that significant of a component related to right-of-way acquisition, but also the risk, and because it's a design build. Now, if it comes through that there some of these risks that have been built into the costs are not there, is there a potential that the cost could potentially come down before the project is completed? And is there any basis upon which we may be able to negotiate any further on the right-of-way acquisition component of the cost to
Yeah,
potentially bring these costs down?
This is Alex.
Alex?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Hi, Alex. Alex, hi. I can take this question. Is that okay? So on our right of way, part of the reason that it's so expensive.
Paula,
is that it
can you please announce who you are and give us your background briefly, and then, because I don't know if
Okay.
a council,
Oh, very good.
some
Very
are
good. Hi.
calling in and don't have the, thank you.
Okay, this is Paula Beauchamp. I'm from SBCTA. I'm the director of project delivery and toll operations, and I've been involved in the project since about 2016. Yes, I can answer some of your questions. So the number one question you had was about the right of way and the enormous cost. Well, part of the reason that right of way is so expensive is that if we were not to build shoe flies, which are temporary tracks, which basically would detour some of the railroad's trains around our work area, we would end up being out there 6 to 8 years with the bridge out of service. So the shoe flies, unfortunately, were to be built on the north side of the yard. And because the project through the environmental phase went on for, I think, about 13 years, in the meantime, BNSF had developed that area. With those new developments, that forces us to go further north of the yard. And that's what impacts the housing along 4th Street. And it requires us to actually acquire those properties. We relocate those residents, and then we demolish that area, build the shoe flies, and then we can start rebuilding the bridge.
What is the total right-of-way cost?
It's about 46 million. I'm sorry, 72 million. And that includes utilities, because there are utilities as well.
Okay, guys, I think we have a motion and.
Wait, hold on, because I had a question. I press, you guys don't see when you put your hand up?
Go ahead, Councilmember.
Okay, I just have a quick question. One of my biggest concerns is Council Member Charette with the 40th Street widening. State Street, is that going to make these projects go away?
So no, okay? I want to make sure I was muted. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hi, Betsy. So
Hi.
the projects that already have funding through the arterial funds will remain in place. So 40th Street widening, State Street, those don't change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys, let's go ahead and let's call the roll here. I think we've this is a pretty no-brainer here. First off, I want to send my deep appreciation to our staff, Kristen, Alex, thank you. It's a lot of work. Our community has been waiting a long time for this. And I also want to express my deep appreciation to Paula and Ray and Andrea. Thank you for joining us tonight. You provide a lot of background and insight, and we're grateful for our partnership. I think there's 2 takeaways. The design build, I remember that. I think Mark Steinorth carried it as you guys assisted, and that was a big, I think, win for our community, because that design build allows for a quicker response and the opportunity to get this bridge built. And then secondly, about 2.5 to 3 years ago, you guys actually kind of took the reins on the project. We handed it over, it came before the council, and we partnered with you so that you could be the main project lead. So again, we're very appreciative to SBCTA. We thank you for your expertise and professionalism in all of this. This is something that our community needs. It's been long waiting. I certainly don't want to get in the way of progress. This is a real big thing for us here in our community, and we want to make sure that this continues to get funded. So with that, Ms. City Clerk, if you would please call the roll on this item.
Okay, so the motion was made by Councilmember Figueroa and second by Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez. So I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Yes.
Councilmember Charette.
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Nickel.
Yes.
Councilmember Richard.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Mulvihill?
Yes.
The item passes 7-0.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Also, I want to send my deep appreciation to Henry and Fred. You guys went to Sacramento when you were up there for, I think, training or something. You stopped in, you worked the halls, you knocked on doors. That's what a team is doing here. And I want to say thanks, Fred, because you met with a couple of the individuals, Henry, you as well, and our office coordinated some of those visits. We're grateful that you were able to knock those doors, have those conversations. Paula, you've been a delight to work with, and we thank you, Ray, for all of your good works, and we appreciate it. All right, with that, I think we're done. That's the only agenda item, and you all have a safe night and be safe out there. Thank you again.
All right. Good night.
Night.